Fallout New Vegas is a game about Chandler from Friends and Dr. House touching you inappropriately. So today I wondered what it would be like to beat Fallout New Vegas as Crazy Dave from the hit game Bubsy 3D. The rules are simple. I must do whatever Crazy Dave would do in any given situation. But first, why don't you subscribe? It's free, and you can always unsubscribe later if you decide I'm cringe. The game opens with Chandler putting a bullet in our courier. This event did something to our friend. It turned him both crazy and ginger. So from now on, he will only ever be known as Crazy Ginger Dave, or just Crazy Dave for short. We then get taken in by Dr. Michael Bublé and create our character. This is the closest I could get to creating Crazy Dave in Fallout New Vegas' engine. According to Plants vs Zombies lore, Crazy Dave is actually a very intelligent character and is actually on the same exact drugs as the PvZ replanted dev team. Dave is also a very charismatic fella, so his starting attributes consist of 2 into strength, 2 in perception, 3 in endurance, 10 in charisma, 10 in intellect, 3 in agility, and a whopping 11 in luck. The game then had the audacity to make Dave pick his skills, so naturally, with Dave looking like he can handle explosives, we chose that, science and speech, since he talks in a way that none of us mortals can possibly comprehend. With all of our skills and attributes chosen, we can finally begin our journey. So we steal every single drug we can get our hands on from Michael Bublé and set off to Goodsprings, equipping Dave's chosen weapon, the shotgun, since it is what Dave wielded in Dave Rush, the hit Plants vs Zombies fan game where Dave takes too much acid and sees regular people as zombies. Moving into Goodsprings, we meet our first companion of the journey, known as Bad Motherfucker, who decides to tag along with us out of fear that one day he will have to pay taxes. We then enter our first stop in Goodsprings, the saloon. But then something came over Dave, something evil. He started to thirst for human flesh, and he wanted to gun down anyone who sounded like a food item. Unfortunately, Joe Corn on the Cob was right next to us at the time, and he suffered a minor laceration due to the 12 shotgun pellets entering his skull. Now Dave satiated his bloodlust, we could finally start the tutorial by talking to Sunny Sad Smiles and shooting some bottles off a fence. Naturally, Dave struggled to understand the instructions, so he slapped them with a machete and blew them up. Unfortunately, this just wasn't good enough for Sunny, but walking right up to the bottles and shooting them and ramming the bottles up our rectum, now that was perfect. And now that the tutorial was finished, we could go meet a member of the Beatles in the nearby gas station. The wife beater informs Crazy Dave that a war is coming, so we go to talk to the townsfolk, who agrees to help us thanks to Dave's insane level of charisma, and Easy Pete gives us some sticks of dynamite. This act of kindness does something to Dave. Dave starts to fantasize about Pete day and night, knowing he can't have him, but then something snaps. Dave ignites the dynamite and he starts to throw it. Fortunately, it hit the gang after the Beatles member, and the town of Goodsprings is saved, so Dave hits the road to the nearby town of Prim, where we have our first encounter with the NCR. No! Apparently, Prim has no sheriff and has a fuck ton of outlaws in it, so Dave being Dave, we shot everyone where they stood, reprogrammed the robot to be the sheriff, and cause Crazy Dave is a lazy twat, we leave Prim asking no other questions other than how the fuck can a super mutant run at the speed of a nonce being chased by the police. On our way out of Prim, our boy Dave got a lead that our boy Chandler Bing was seen in Nipton, so we head down the road where Dave decided to talk to some friendly locals. Unfortunately, the bloodlust came back, and Dave has had enough of being talked to like that. This led Dave to internalise nasty people as zombies, so he could forgive himself for their brutal slaughter. With the zombies dead, we move forward to Nipton, where Spider-Man goes off on one about a lottery.
Yeah! Who won the lottery?
And we shoot him dead and relieve him of his lottery ticket so Dave can go and gamble once more. It is in Nipton where we encounter the main villains of this game, Caesar's Salad. And when Dave talked to them, he thought everything they were doing was justified. So he went off on his merry way to touch some plants and head to the nearest town of Novak. The main reason we were actually headed to Novak was to recruit a new soldier into our private army to verse the zombies. We needed to recruit Benson Boone himself. Unfortunately, Benson's wife was taken hostage, so Dave, being the good Samaritan that he is, decided he was going to give him closure and bring this nice old granny to the bottom of the dinosaur where she gets her tip blown off. Dave then feasted on her corpse and went to go collect Benson before going to talk with Manny from Ice Age. Manny then tells us to go suck off some ghouls or something, I don't know, I wasn't paying any attention. Next thing we know, we're at the ghouls' masturbation station where we are called ugly by a big green arm, so Dave acts accordingly, killing him and then eating the nearby door frame before slaughtering every single zombie in sight with some sick 360 no-scopes that were performed live on Twitch. Speaking of which, all my videos are streamed over at twitch.tv/Hooie, so why don't you come on by for a free cookie? Once the situation at the zombies' masturbation station was resolved, Dave started to hallucinate and started to take jet to avoid his emotional baggage, so we move on to Boulder City thanks to the lead given to us by Manny from Ice Age. It is here where we desecrate a war memorial to the dismay of this random bellend whose brother fought in the war. Naturally, Dave thought it was an appropriate response to call him and his brother a little bitch before being thrown right into a hostage negotiation with a man called Ketchup. Thanks to Dave having developed his own language during his time in the Great British Seagull War, he managed to talk Ketchup down before telling the commander to open fire on him anyway. Crazy Dave then joined in on the massacre and took Ketchup's headband, which was laced with LSD. This LSD had the effect of making anyone staring at it think it was a frying pan, but it was in fact a symbol of war. Now that Dave has spilt the blood of his enemies in most areas of New Vegas, we went onward to Freeside, where Dave wanted to show he meant business, so he gunned down a kid's pet rat. Filled with guilt, Dave unfortunately started taking more jet than ever, becoming fully addicted, turning his bloodstream into 70% jet and 40% piss. On his come down, Dave was more filled with rage than ever before, so he gunned down a child in the street who he thought was an imp before teabagging his corpse. Since Dave has an intellect we can only dream of, we attempted to talk a security robot out of our way, but here we realised we were one level short to talk the robot down, so we had to go and find some mercenary work. So I questioned what kind of work would Dave be best at? Well, thanks to Dave's muscular frame and intimidating physique, I stationed him as a bodyguard for a nearby gun store. Unfortunately, Dave was too high on jet at the time to do his job properly, and an IDF member slipped through the cracks and war crimed the entire gun store. To be fair, I hardly see how this is Dave's fault, seeing that there was another bodyguard out there, but it didn't stop the other bodyguard from trying to murder Dave, but all he did was provide Dave with some more lunch. On the bright side, this little task gave me the level I needed to go and make the robot stand down, and we then enter the strip. Dave heard word that his boy Chandler Bing was in the Tops Casino, so he immediately went in, surrendered all of his weapons but one, and then sweet-talked him into bed, where Dave could finally exact his revenge. While Chandler waited for Dave got out his switchblade and gave him the authentic London experience. It is here that Dave finally found his iconic white shirt, and he put it on to embrace who he was truly meant to be. A man who against all odds will stand against the coming apocalypse and take the fight to the Zomboss, who turns out has been going undercover by the codename of Mr. House. So we continue on and inspect Benny's feet, hoping for some dirty little secrets, but all he had was some toe jam and a note folded between his toes talking about taking over New Vegas from Mr. House and all the other factions. So out of pure intrigue and gingerness, Dave went to go talk to Yes Man, who informs us that the only thing standing in the way of our rule of New Vegas is those pesky little factions everywhere, so they needed to go one way or another. Our first stop was the White Glove Society, who are apparently very high class, polite and scary people. On the way there, we are also confronted by Caesar's Salad's messenger, who graciously gave us the opportunity to meet with him, which I will be saving for later. Upon entering the White Glove Society, we are met with some absolute Tory knobheads, including this one guy who is dissing Dave's drip. So we clobber the fuck out of him before meeting this cowboy who has a missing son. I told the guy he shouldn't be so worried since we are in high society here, but he insisted that we help, and Dave, being the kind-hearted Samaritan that he is, he agreed before drinking out of a toilet. We then proceeded to speak to the owner of this fine establishment, who berated Dave for his meal deal choice: a cheese sandwich, some ready salted crisps, and some plain water.
You disgust me.
Feeling defeated, Dave went to go find a more normal meal in the kitchen of this establishment, but instead he found the cowboy's son in the freezer. Thinking this would have to do, Dave killed the man where he stood and feasted upon his liver. Dave then went to go tell the dad his son was nowhere to be found, and then we became accepted at the White Glove Society. After that rather pleasant experience, we decided to leave the White Glove Society alone. Dave's next stop was the Brotherhood of Steel's base, but unfortunately, it seemed like nobody was home, so we had to return later, and instead of going to the Brotherhood of Steel, we decided it was finally time for Dave to meet the Zomboss himself. But Dave wasn't one for FaceTime, it scared him, and Dave wanted to meet Zomboss in person, so we went into Zomboss's bedroom and met him face to face, and Dave was struck by his pure beauty. The Zomboss had something that Dave liked, and Dave wanted the Zomboss to be his and only his. Unfortunately, this was but a premonition, and Dave did engage in FaceTime with Mr. House, but his feelings remained. Dave wanted him, and I'm sure Mr. House felt the same. Dave then finally got paid the 1,000 chips for the delivery of the platinum chip, but just as we were leaving to place it all on red, Mr. House wanted to show us something. Hoping it was his trouser snake, Dave followed. Unfortunately, Mr. House showed Dave a different type of package. It was an update package for his robots who now had missile launchers. This show of raw, explosive strength made Dave's lust even more potent, so for now, Dave has agreed to do whatever the Zomboss has asked of him in hopes that one day he will be his. Our next step is to sabotage Caesar's salad, so we head down the road encountering the NCR where they once again got their wish for a nuclear winter. Further down the road, we made it to Salad Man's boat. Unfortunately, his army was none too pleased with my previous actions, so they kept attempting to gun me down. But after waiting a day, all seemed forgiven, and at the fortress we meet the man himself, Caesar, who wants us to destroy some computers or something. I don't know, I wasn't paying attention, I was too busy looking at this man's atrocious hairline. So we head down to those computers and boot up some more of Zomboss's security robots before running away from the Salad Army. Our next stop was once again the Brotherhood of Steel, who made Dave strip down to his birthday suit before entering. Dave liked where this was going, so he obviously obliged, but upon following them, they put a collar on Dave. But this wasn't just Dave's regular collar, no, it was an explosive collar, which will blow Dave unless he does exactly what they want. Now, Dave is no stranger to collars, but this one was a step too far for him and he decided that the Brotherhood of Steel must die for this. But first, he had to get this thing off, so he went to talk down the NCR with his nonsensical gibberish before going back to the Brotherhood, getting his collar removed, and encountering someone who somehow had a worse hairline than Caesar himself. Out of fear that it was contagious, Dave ran off to his next stop, the Boomers, where on the way we ran into some more of the NCR who also wished for a nuclear winter. Continuing on to the Boomers' hideout, these folks were not the most welcoming. In fact, they really lived up to their name, since Dave is actually 0.1% European, and in reality, Boomers hate the concept of immigration, so they responded in the most diplomatic fashion possible, with artillery strikes. Upon entering their hideout, Dave has already made up his mind for their piss-poor hospitality. They were all going to die, so Dave shot and ate their leader. The next faction we had to deal with was a little faction called the Homers, but when Dave entered their hideout, he got mentally attacked by a psychic receptionist, freezing Dave in place. And Dave, having already experienced the Salem witch trials, decided to put an end to this fuckery. This evil could not be allowed to breach containment, so he gunned down their leader and ran off before once again going back to the Brotherhood of Steel and finally getting revenge for being subjected to that horrible hairline by self-destructing the base along with everyone in it. Our next stop for our beloved Zomboss was to infiltrate an NCR base and use their computer. Once again, an NCR soldier wished for another nuclear winter, but for once, this actually worked in our favour since this nuclear winter demolished the whole squad, leaving very few left standing, while also supplying Dave with his supper. With no more NCR soldiers standing, we did the thing for our beloved Zomboss before going back to him where he finally tells us it's time to commence the Battle of Hoover Dam. But Dave had a different plan in mind, and now it was finally time for Dave to put it into action. The Great Khans had to die, and I've gotta say, if the Great Khans are so great, then how come they died so easily? Dave then returns to Yes Man, who tells him the horrible news. In order for Dave to achieve his ambitions, the Zomboss had had to go. Dave, feeling distraught, had to go talk to Mr. House in person, and he looked exactly like Dave had always dreamed, pure perfection. But unfortunately, Dave was having jet withdrawals and started to use Zomboss as a punching bag. But due to Zomboss's frail frame, he just couldn't take it, and he passed away peacefully. Dave was racked with guilt, but he couldn't stop now. He's nearly fulfilled his ambitions, so we go to talk to Yes Man before commencing the Battle of Hoover Dam with our army of robots. Shooting our way through, we had our good old friend Poseidon show up to aid us on this hard journey, and we finally made it to the dam control room, where we lied to some NCR soldiers, making them run off before taking full control of Hoover Dam for ourselves. There was only one thing left to do: deal with the NCR and Caesar's Legion. So we marched towards Caesar's Salad's fortress and managed to talk the madmen down by raining down enough grenades to make the US military crack a smile. And on the way out of Caesar's Salad's fortress, we encountered the NCR's leader, who was fully disrespecting Dave. This was tough talk for a fellow within missile launching distance, so deciding I liked those odds, Dave picked this fight and instantly died. But upon reloading, we realised it would just be easier if we throw this fucker off Hoover Dam. So Dave had finally done it. He had finally achieved control of Hoover Dam and New Vegas itself, but something was missing. Love. Dave was so racked with guilt about Zomboss that he decided to build a time machine to bring his love back to life. Unfortunately, the machine wasn't calibrated correctly, and reality started to shatter around me, and somehow I found myself back in my uni house eating my beans on toast. And my housemate came in raving about this Plants vs Zombies challenge he made. I think it got a good 20 views at least or something.